Morning. We are live and we are waiting for Georgina to jump on. We are going to chat today about the Right to Fight doc that's going to be screening here at the Canadian Sport Film Festival next week. I am super pumped. I will be moderating the panel afterwards. And I love this film so much. It's so important to the history of our sport. And I really wanted to talk a bit about how it came to be. Women's boxing doesn't always get the spotlight, and definitely not these women, these historical women that literally fought for our right to fight. Because at one point in the early 70s, it was illegal for women to fight. So there's that. I am going to see if Georgina, who's the director of the film, and she will be here next week as well. But I wanted to get some of the, on a panel, the panel we're doing after the documentary next week, and I hope you're all going to join us. It's at the TIFF Lightbox. We're going to talk a bit more about the relevance to Canadian history, and we're going to have some people talking about how the right to fight here in Ontario was a thing back in the day. So let's see. I am hoping that Georgina is going to be asking to join shortly. If not, I could just keep talking about everything. Oh wait, here we go. No, she's not there. She did say this is her first time going live, so we will give it a second. I really think the importance of the history and, with the fact that we don't know that much about why we're able to fight now. The fact that it was literally not allowed. It was illegal. It was not a thing. It's pretty crazy that is actually, that was like in the 70s. That's basically where this documentary starts, in the early 70s. And myself, born in 1976, little did I know that, it wasn't allowed. That's not that long ago. That's really not that long ago. So I am just going to check where our girl is. Yep, she's there. Give me 1 second. I am going to and I don't know what happened if that all stopped because I had to go to WhatsApp for a second. I did tell her I was going to be a few minutes late, so that's my bad and not shocking. So I'll just give you guys the rundown of what this film is, and I really hope you can join us next Thursday at the TIFF Lightbox. It's the Canadian premiere, and like I said, I'm going to be moderating the panel afterwards, and Georgina, who's the director, is going to be there. We're also going to have Lene, who is there she is. Okay. All right, Georgina, I see that you're here. Can you ask to join? I know this is your first time doing this. It's fine. And it's also early morning. It's not early morning for her because she's in the UK, but 9 a.m. here. So thanks for everybody that's jumping on so early. I will post this later as well. Georgina, please ask to join. Well, it says that you've joined and you're here, but can you ask to... Oh, here we go. Yes. Did I say yes? Accept. We'll be fine. Where's my coffee? There she is.
Hi.
Hi. How are
How's it
you?
going? This is my first time doing this, so I'm
Totally
excited.
fine. You made it work. You're here. This is happening. What time is it there?
It's 1 o'clock.
What? Oh,
Lunchtime.
see, you've had coffees. You've done all the things.
I'm awake. Don't worry.
All right, we made it. We made it. Okay, so Georgina, I was just about to kind of explain.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the blurb on what the film is. So basically, I call these women the OGs of Girls Just Want a Box. They were here fighting for it in the early 70s. And they're literally, they paved the way along with a bunch of other women in other countries doing the same things, to give us the opportunity to be where we are here now. And we're not there yet, but obviously the rise of women's sports and even women's boxings, the opportunity has really, opportunities are there, pay is not quite equitable. We still have a long way to go, but I think it's important to acknowledge the history and the women that were there before us. And I think that's what this does. And I'm so, grateful. And we've talked about this many times. I'm so happy that you did this. And I remember, I'll talk about Sue in a second telling me about it, but I just had no idea it was going to be this good. Like, it is so good. Like, bawling tears every time, but like in such a good way. Like, it's really, really good. So I'll just give everybody the synopsis, and then then we're going to dive into why you decided to do this. So in the late 1970s, it was a group of women in the US, and they were battling against the athletic commissions because sanctioned boxing matches were not allowed for women, right? And they were acting as gatekeepers to ensure that professional boxing remained a male-based sport, which is kind of to women who have been in boxing, we're like, what? That doesn't make sense. But I mean, like anything else, let's
Yeah.
keep it male dominated, right? So the contributions of these women who you're featuring throughout the film, they're just these amazing trailblazers, and the things they did to overcome the sexism, the racism, the homophobia. It's just like their battle for the right to fight, which is the perfect name for this film. It's just astonishing. Their stories need to be heard. These women they're just amazing. So I'm going to let you kind of discuss who they are a little quickly. And then also, how did you end up getting involved? Because you're not in the boxing world. So how did this happen? That's what I want to know.
Thank you for those kind words, by the way. So it's interesting because the fight they had is very echoes the fight that most women have, especially women that want to break into male-dominated worlds. So
Mhm.
it's interesting because at the time when I came across the story, I was in a bit of a pivotal moment in my life. I was mainly working as a producer on documentaries.
Mhm.
And my job was to come up with stories. At the time, I was looking for stories for an anthology of stories for a Netflix documentary series about sporting
Oh,
scandals.
yeah.
And I felt really frustrated. I was like, I'm a producer, but I really want to direct. And in general, it's harder for women to get directing jobs in our industry.
Yeah.
So I felt very frustrated, to be honest with you. And I remember I had a meeting with my team, the team that I was working with, and we were all just bouncing around ideas, should we look at stories of scandals in women's boxing or in skiing or whatever? And I thought women's boxing, that's really interesting. And I just Googled it. And the first thing that came out was a 30-minute film from the 1970s about Cat
Oh,
Davis,
yeah.
who was a boxer at the time, right? Cat Davis. And the whole film, which is just 30 minutes long, talked about her fight against the New York State Athletic Commission for exactly the same reasons that you were describing earlier, the fact that they wouldn't allow women to professionally box. So she was taking them to court.
Wow.
And then from there, I was like, oh my God, it didn't completely resonate, but it was just nice to see a woman kind
Mhm.
of trying to change the status quo to allow her to explore her passions. So from there, I found Sue Fox's website, which just opened my mind to
Right?
everything. Yeah.
So that's for people that don't know, that's the Women's Boxing Archive Network. And Sue, who's also in the film, who we know quite well, we sponsor her International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame, which honors all these women. Like every year, there's so many women that are being honored, and it's the only thing that really honors women in this sport. That like it brings an amazing community.
Yes.
It just keeps growing. But without her meticulous archive
Yeah.
of information,
It's incredible.
I don't, where
So
would you have found the information?
So Sue Fox was a boxer at the time. She was a contemporary of Cat Davis, of Lady
Mhm.
Tyger. She was a boxer in her own right. But she knew at the time that she was experiencing a historical moment
Right.
because she began just collecting everything about her experience, from
Hmm.
posters to flyers, even down to a hotel receipt of one of her boxing matches, right? I don't know,
And
she
that
had a
was
soda
Cat?
or something.
That was Cat or Sue?
That was Sue. This
Right.
is all Sue. So like
Yeah.
Sue was a contemporary of Cat. And she was a boxer herself, and she must have known that she was going through this historical moment because she was collecting everything. You know, all the flyers, the posters, even down to this hotel receipt at one of her matches. And over a period of time, she amassed what I would say is the biggest museum of women's boxing.
And this is
it's in her house.
WBAN. So just somebody asked, it's WBAN, WBAN, Women's Boxing Archive Network. And yeah, she has all this in her house.
Exactly. So I actually went to Sue's house, and she has this like tiny room full of boxes. Obviously, over time, she's digitized everything and she's put it on the website, but that is just pure history, pure history. And it'd be great to find a museum that could take that, preserve it, and like give it a room that's air conditioned and everything to really preserve it. But it was really, when I think about it, I really owe it all to her, because she kept all these traces of history. It meant that I could learn more about the other people involved. You know, I only knew of Kat Davis because of this film, but she, you know, her website led me to Lady Tyger, it led me to Levon Ludian, it led me to Princess Red Star, one of the first indigenous female fighters. So it's really thanks to her that I had all this primary source material. And also, I've got her book here, Melissa Smith, who the history of women's boxing. So between those, and a lot of this stuff actually comes from Sue as well. So again, it's women that actually cared to put the history down for me to be able to know who else was involved, really.
Yeah, and it's Melissa Smith's a historian. She's part of the International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame, and we post about it every year. And absolutely anybody can go to this. It's not a closed. Everybody thinks boxing is a secret society, and like no, unless you're a boxer and you've been a boxer for 10 years, you can't. Like we invite everybody. We invite all the Girls Just Want to Box ambassadors, and we go to the International Women's Hall of Fame to meet these women. And like that's where I've gotten to know Christy Martin and all. Like everybody is there. Support. It's such a supportive community, and you know the women in this film, like some of those stories I didn't know either. Someone just said, "Oh, I'm a boxer. I didn't know about WBAN." And sometimes, like people are just too busy in their own lane and they don't see all the things around us. So what we're trying to bring this more to the forefront with Girls Just Want to Box, as well as everything else we do, but. Okay, so let's go back to you've got all the information from Sue, and then did you pitch this to your team?
Yeah, originally we pitched it to Netflix, but it didn't quite hit the brief because obviously it wasn't quite like a corruption story. It was more of a discrimination story. So in the end, we ended up going with Sky. They were really interested in these sort of stories, you know, stories about discrimination. And I was so happy that they said yes, because it meant, you know, I'm someone that's a little bit tired and fatigued of true crime stories, and I was back then too. So just knowing that there was a channel that was open to commissioning a story about women succeeding, you know, women with ambition, women in sport doing something incredible, like that for me was great, and an opportunity for me as well, you know. So
for sure. And you know, women's boxing is really big in the UK, right? Like I'm assuming it's everywhere. You see it
it should
more
be
often.
more. It should be more. I mean, I
be
went to see
more.
the Savannah Marshall Clarissa Shields fight, and honestly, the atmosphere and the crowd was going wild. Like I could feel the ground trembling like an earthquake, and I was like, "This is amazing!" Like there is an audience and there is support, so it's really strong here. Maybe it's bigger in the US, I'm not sure, but I know Clarissa Shields is really leading that movement over there. So
she's doing amazing things, and with her I got to see her film at TIFF. Oh my God. That's coming out at Christmas. Everybody needs to see this. You know, we're working hard to keep the momentum going. I've been in this industry a long time. I'm seeing the shift. It feels hard because because some of us that have been doing it for so long, we're like, okay, finally, but we got to keep pushing. We're getting there. And again, one of the ways that feels like, you know, acknowledging the past, and, you know, so excited that this is going to be shown at the Toronto Sport Film Festival next Thursday. You're coming. Is this your first trip to Toronto? Okay.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Hey,
I can't wait.
that's exciting. That's exciting. And okay, so what is the um
Hmm.
after they greenlit it, Sky Sports said let's go, and what was the next steps for
Yeah,
you?
Sky documentaries. So it was about like finding these women.
Yeah.
Are they alive? You know, and because of Sue, I started piecing together, okay, there's someone called Lady Tyger. And believe it or not, it was as easy as going on the white pages and finding her number there. It's no
Okay.
longer there, obviously, now. But at the time, I just called up the number and she picked up. And we started talking. And then we sort of became friends over the phone. And over a period of time, she would tell me her story. And I did the same with Kat Davis. And with the help of Cassie Thornton, the producer, she found Pat Pineda. And I mean, I only include a section of women,
Yeah.
but there were a lot more.
Right.
You know, those were some pioneers, but it really was a huge movement. And so it was trying to find the women that were still alive and that remembered it and wanted to share their story.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the sharing these stories, right? And giving them the platform
Place.
to do it.
Yeah.
Like, so did you start with okay,
Yeah.
actually, let's run down the three women and just give us a little
Yeah.
synopsis about whether they were all in, or they were like, I don't know if I want to do this, or whether they were like, finally, someone's acknowledging my struggles.
They're all in. They were all in. And
Good.
like they had different approaches as well. Like with Lady Tyger, for example, she wanted to become a boxer around the 70s, which was the golden era of boxing. She would see Muhammad Ali on TV and her father sort of shadow box, like pretending to be Muhammad Ali. And she was inspired by that.
Yeah.
She wanted to be the female Muhammad
Yeah.
Ali, but she didn't see any other women doing it. And she's like, well, why can't I be the next Muhammad Ali? So with Lady Tyger, it was being inspired by the sports people she saw on TV and wanting a bit of that herself. And others were the same, but they took a different route. Levon Ludian, for example, she was very entrepreneurial. She was a media machine in that she printed her own posters, her flyers. In a way, she would have smashed Instagram and TikTok in that, she had that kind
Right.
of, like, here I am, here are my images, I'm here ready to take some photos. And that was something that I recently thought about, that this movement of female boxers were not a middle-class movement. It was a working-class grassroots movement. There weren't women who would go to protest. I mean, Lady Tyger did, but like there weren't women who were lobbying government and going to protest and writing articles. There were women that were like, I just want to fight in the ring. Just give me a chance.
Girls just want a box.
Let me punch. So for that reason, it meant that they would show up, they would like try and get a fight. It was very action driven rather than philosophically driven. It was
Right.
just give me a chance, I can do it.
Yeah.
I'll train, I'll show you that I can.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I was drawn to that form of feminism, or whatever you want to call it, because it just felt very like, let's just make it happen.
Yeah.
Let's not sit around and talk about it and philosophize. Let's just make it happen. And I think they were more in tune with that way of pushing for change. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like I always say, a female boxer is like one of the biggest FUs to the patriarchy. Like everything we stand for is to smash the patriarchy legitimately. But with these women, okay, so it starts with Lady Tyger, and she's in New York.
Yeah.
And all of
She's
these
in New York.
women, it's in the 70s, and they're kind of all in their 20s.
They're all in their kind of 20s, like late teens, 20s. Levon Ludian was a lot older, but she pretended to be younger. And they were dispersed around the US. You had Levon Ludian in the West Side, Sue was in the West, Pat Pineda was in the West, and then you had Lady Tyger in New York, and they kind of didn't know about each other. They were all feeling this thing in the air of, I want to be a professional boxer, but for some reason there are rules in this book at these athletic commissions saying that I can't be. and in their own states they were pursuing that fight.
Right.
But slowly they came to know each other, and then it formed more like a movement. So it's just fascinating to hear how they met. Yeah.
And that shows the power, right, of women in the sport coming together, because we're all just doing our own thing, trying to fight through whatever country, city, town, we're just trying to do what we can. But if we all come together, we can actually make change. And that's kind of what they did, right?
Yeah.
They all kind of intertwined interestingly. And there's so many twists and turns in this documentary. Like, you can't write this stuff. Like, it's so crazy. Like, when you were finding out things that happened, were you putting things together and going, oh wait, no, this happened, and then what?
Yeah, it's hard, you know, because like with any film, there's always that pressure of giving it a Hollywood ending.
Right.
You know, people are so used to watching stories that go a certain way, but when you're dealing with real life and history, and sometimes it doesn't have a Hollywood ending. Sometimes, and a lot of the time, pioneers don't have Hollywood endings.
Right.
They're there to open the doors for the next generation. They fight, and they might not benefit from that fight, but the next generation would, right?
Right.
So one of the struggles in trying to make a film that felt like real to the story, but also uplifting, was dealing with the trajectory of a pioneer, the fact that it's kind of bittersweet.
Yeah.
So it's trying to find the light in their trajectory, but also acknowledging that it was hard. But yeah, I'll leave it for everyone else to watch to see how it truly ends.
And I appreciate you taking that stance, right? Because I think there's sometimes that, like, you guys really got the human side of it, the boxing side of it. Like, it didn't shy away from the boxing, but it's also like, it wasn't just boxing.
Yeah.
Like, boxing for women is so much more than just the sport, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's I'll let people watch it. But okay, so let's talk about the women in the. I just want to, in case people don't know who they are, and I'll tag them when we repost this. But Lady Tyger, she's in New York. Kat Davis, she's out of New York as well. She moved there, right?
She was from Louisiana. She actually was a great fencer, and that was what she actually wanted to do. But what happens is she goes to New York to try and become a professional fencer, but she basically realizes that she needs a job. You know, she's running out of money, so she sees an ad that says that someone's looking for boxers and
women boxers. Someone's looking for female boxers, right? Was that it?
Yeah, for boxers. But she reads the ad and thinks they mean like packaging boxes, like someone who boxes, I guess. So she gets confused. She's like, oh, that sounds like a really easy job, you know, and calls up the number, but then realizes they're actually looking for boxers, because, you know, it was this guy called Sal Jerry who saw an opportunity, you know, and wanted to see whether he could make money off it. I don't want to give too much away, because then I'll tell them.
Don't give too much away, but I think it's so interesting that you're able to show the things that happen with relationships, with coaches, with promoters, with managers. Like, it's an age-old tale that continues today, and it's so interesting how everybody's just. It's an interesting world that no one kind of opens up the veil behind usually, right? So that's a really cool thing that you were able to do that. And I love that you talk about the East Coast and then the West Coast. Now, let's talk about Pat for a second. She's the most badass grandmother on the face of this earth.
She's so bad.
And everything about her is just
and again,
absolutely.
Like, I just want to say, you know, these are just a select few, but there were so many more. There were Pat Pineda. I mean, she's so badass. She's so cool. Even now, like, she amazes me. So with her, you know, she came from something happened in her life that was very dark. And so for her, boxing became that light at the end of the tunnel. She felt like she could channel all her rage into something productive like a sport,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Which again, you know, talking about these things that you just said about it's an age-old tale, there are so many things that repeat themselves, you know? There are women that still use boxing in the same way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's really fascinating to look back at the history, because you connect, you know, you think these women are just part of this story.
Yep.
And it actually makes you get to know yourself a little more too. So Papiniera's story, you know, it is one about coming from a dark place and turning that into light, turning it into a fight. So for that reason, I'm a massive fan. Yeah.
So were you a boxing fan before this, or did this make you a boxing fan?
I was a sports fan.
Yeah.
And this definitely made me a boxing fan. Yeah. And even like, so we did a lot of recon shoots during the film, and instead of like, one of the things that the exec said was, instead of using actors, use actual boxers for the recon scenes, which I thought was a really good idea. One of those, her name is Patricia Mabata, almost qualified for the Olympics this year, and is now professionally boxing, I think professionally, or she's boxing in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And I'm constantly looking at her stories. I'm like, wow, like she's just rising and rising and rising. And so like looking at the past and like learning about boxing and like the art of boxing, you know, the fact that it's a sport, not, you know, people have such misconceptions about it.
Correct.
But also seeing people who came together to help us make this film who are into boxing was so inspirational. And seeing her kind of fly makes me think, wow, like it's really picking up, and I feel like it's doing a lot for women at the moment. Yeah,
it is, and I'd love to, like, how was when it aired on Sky Sports on the how did that go? Like, what I saw the pictures that you sent of like the billboards in
in
it
Sky
was just
documentaries.
amazing. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
No, it was awesome. And like, look, I'm over the moon. Like, I'm so happy. I just can't believe that the film got made, because there were so many disruptions. We did this over COVID.
Right.
Lady Tyger almost died. She almost died in the middle of making this film from her own health issues.
Wow.
You know, I remember being in that hospital and thinking, this woman who is a piece of history, like, is she gonna die? What's gonna happen? So there were so many disruptions that meant that this film got made over a period of like 4 years.
Wow.
So finally seeing those billboards at Sky and seeing it on TV and in festivals around the world, it was a really proud moment. So I'm over the moon.
And what's the response been when you've been screening it? Because what are the festivals it's been screened in so far?
So it premiered at Sheffield Doc Fest, Doc NYC. It actually screened at this festival called Women Make Waves in Taiwan.
Wow.
That was last week. I wish I had been there. Like,
How'd it go?
I mean, I wasn't there, but I was just seeing the images and going, this is so cool. You know, it was in Taiwan. And the fact that it's going to Toronto as well makes me happy, because I know that Lady Tyger fought there. She did an exhibition in Canada. So this idea that maybe the film is sort of traveling the world or traveling states as well in the way that they did makes me happy. But it still needs to be screened on American TV, because at the heart,
it's an American story.
at the heart is an American story, so it needs to be on American TV, really.
Well, hopefully there'll be in Toronto, hopefully there'll be some of those buyers and those people that'll see the impact of this film story, and hopefully it'll get on one of the American streamers channels, whatever, because it's a story of America, it's a story of hope, it's a story of, like, right now it's the story of women in sport, and it's so impactful, and it's a really good, like, the way you guys put it together, like, it's so positive, like, even though it's gut-wrenching at some points, it still feels so positive. It's beautifully shot. And I think a lot of times women's boxing doesn't get that, because what they do is they slam women's boxing into the male
Right.
view of
Yeah.
boxing, and then you're like, it's not quite what we need it to be, right? But
Yeah.
the way you guys tried. So tell me a bit about why you chose that kind of the look, the feel of it. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's like hats off to Ryan L. Parker. He was the DP on it, and he brings like a real sensitivity to everything. For me, it was really important that we would shoot it in a kind of 1970s
So good.
fashion,
Yeah.
because what I found having worked on documentaries that looked at past 10
Right.
stories, you use a lot of archive and the aspect ratio is different. So you might shoot on anamorphic, which is that kind of wide lens type of look,
Yes.
but then you're using, I don't know, something from the 1980s where the aspect ratio is a square,
Right.
and it's suddenly you're with dead space. So for me, it was really important that we try and like create that vibe again, so that when you're watching it, it feels even more immersive.
Yeah.
Like it cuts from interview to archive in a way that doesn't jar the
Yeah.
eye. And even though we, we didn't shoot on film, but it was really important for me to make it feel like it was kind of filmic and had that kind of grade. So yeah, it was just an idea to make it as immersive as possible, whilst also showing you these women in a really authentic light. So you almost feel like, even though they're talking to you now as elderly women, it should feel youthful. It should feel like they're bringing their younger selves out again to tell this story, to give it that kind of energy. So yeah, that was sort of the thoughts behind it.
I know this is getting ahead of myself, but do we feel like there's a right to fight too?
I
There's
mean, look,
so many stories. There's so
the,
many stories to tell, and
I think, look, with all sports, there are waves
yeah,
to them.
yeah,
So like in the 70s, boxing was really, really popular. Then kind of wrestling took, even though it's not the same thing, like wrestling
yeah.
took over in the 80s. But then boxing had a comeback in the 90s with Layla Ali and so on. And
Christy
so it comes
Christy Martin
Christy
in the
Martin as
'80s.
well.
That's Christy Martin's literally the reason why everybody, from my age group has started boxing, because that's who they saw on TV.
Exactly. Like every generation has that iconic figure that inspires them.
Mm-hmm.
And those iconic figures who were young women once had another
Yeah,
icon that inspired them.
yeah,
It's a kind of cycle. So because I only focused on one slice of history,
mm-hmm.
but someone might want to do the 90s, someone might want to do what's going on now. Like, for example, in the same way that Clarissa Shields just is getting her film, I know that they're in production for the Jane Couch not documentary, but film.
That's amazing.
I think it's Sydney Sweeney who's
No,
playing her.
that's Chrissy
Oh,
Martin.
Christy Martin. Sorry,
Yeah.
man.
So Sydney Sweeney, I would
Sorry.
love Jane Couch to have
Yeah,
a film.
I think I should definitely have her own film. I mean, there are so many stories like this that should be told.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely a right to fight 2, 3, 4, and as long as we live, I guess. Yeah.
Right. I think it's, with the International Women's Boxing Hall of Fame coming up in April, and I hope everybody can go, including you, Georgina. It's just, there's so many stories to be told.
Yeah.
Like, it's a treasure trove of things. Like,
Honestly,
I don't understand why no one has, like, I don't know, maybe that's something else we need to do. We'll talk
yeah.
later.
Kristina, that's for you.
But I think with this Canadian premiere, which is super exciting, and I'm really excited. I don't even know if that many people know about the Canadian Sport Film Festival. It's been going on for 14 years. I think it's they love to show films that are impactful, that ignite change, that have created change, that tell the stories of sport other than just winning or losing. Right? There's so much more that goes
Yeah.
into sport, and especially for women, sport is just that thing that helps you, with discipline, with becoming a leader, with all the things. And boxing is even more revolutionary for women,
Empowering. It's
right?
empowering. Yeah.
Yeah. And, so give us was there anything that was like really a funny moment or a fun moment, or like, I don't want to give away things in the film, but what about behind the scenes? Like, was there anything that you just like touched your heart with these women?
I mean,
Everything.
moment. So one thing, I suppose, I mean, there were a lot of moments like this, but I really, really wanted to meet a boxer called Princess Red Star.
Okay.
And I knew of her because of Sue Fox, you know, and her website. And Princess Red Star was one of the first indigenous female boxers. She grew up with a lot of brothers who boxed and
Right.
got into it that way.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to her on the phone, and I was trying really hard to organize for us to meet, but she actually, unfortunately, passed away before we could get to her. And I would have loved to have had her story in this as well. But, you know, we couldn't. So, you know, moments like that where you feel like you're so close at getting the vocal history of someone's life, and that hasn't perhaps been written. It's not in a book. It's not in, you know, there aren't many newspaper clippings about a person. You feel like this is a moment that they could really share something so important with us.
Right.
And just missing her, you know, moments like that were quite hard to deal with because you feel like a piece of history is just gone. Obviously, thanks to Sue, not all of it was gone, but it's just that it would have been nice to have met her. And there are so many other pioneers that I missed. So it's just things like that where you feel like a person represents a universe, a history, you know, their ambitions, dreams, and struggles, and you really want to encapsulate that in some way and honor it. And sometimes not being able to capture it for whatever reason is hard, you know.
Yeah. We see this all the time in there's so many stories to be told. There's so many women winning and losing and struggling, and like it's a lot. But I think having this, and I remember when Sue was telling me about it, we were at the Hall of Fame, I think it was 21, 22, and she's like, yeah, you know, Sue, she's like, I'm doing this documentary thing, I don't know, we'll see what happens, I'm helping out, do. And I'm like, I want to know more about this. And then as I kept learning more, and then when I saw it, I was like, Sue, you're so casual. This is crazy. This is such an amazing document.
Yeah, with Sue, like she has so many projects, and the
Yeah.
woman's so ambitious that, like, for her, you know, for me, the documentary was my life for 4 years. For her, it was like yet another thing that she's doing. You know, she's just like nonstop, like productive. She's prolific, so it makes sense that she was like, oh yeah, that's just another documentary I'm doing.
Well, I think there's been a lot of people, and this happens to a lot of female boxers I know. There's people that'll be like, yeah, I'm going to follow you, I'm going to do a documentary, but nothing happens. They
Yeah.
follow them, they take the things, they do the interviews, but then nothing. This is no small feat, right? Like documentaries in general are hard to bring to life, let alone
especially now.
especially
Like,
now.
because in a way, like with anything, and like the way the world is at the moment, like everyone's kind of financially struggling, and in a way, like TV at the moment is moving towards the internet because the next generation, they're raised on the internet, so that's the way they consume content, entertainment, and so it's less and less easy to get projects off the ground through a TV commission. But at the same time, you know, the positive of that is you've got the internet. So if, for example, like I find out that there's another pioneer, you know, that I didn't quite get on this, there's the internet, you know, there are ways of like encapsulating their story that other people can, you know, through your channel or through other ways. So in a way, it's a good thing. It's very democratizing, the internet, although it does make it harder to commission these like big documentaries.
And that's why, like, it's such a massive feat for this to have even, like, for this to have happened, for this to be showing at film festivals, for, you know, I hope it'll these women feel proud. You've given them a moment that no one else was giving them. And I just want to celebrate them. I want to celebrate you for doing this. And I'm so excited to meet you in person next week.
Same here.
I really hope everybody who's watching this, and we're promoting the shit out of this because we want a full house. We want everybody to see this. And we're promoting it through Boxing Ontario, through the Female Development Committee, through our database, through hopefully we're teaming up with Fast and Female, who's another sports organization here. So we
Okay.
really, really want to make sure people are here. Now they can also watch it digitally. So there's a Canadian Sport Film Festival digital option as well. I'm not sure how it works with IP in the US. So I know that I tried to watch this from the New York Dog Festival and we couldn't in Canada. So
Right.
they're tricky with that. But hopefully, we'll be seeing this on one of the major streaming. One of the
Definitely.
major
Hopefully in
streamers.
America for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We're
But
hoping.
thank you
Okay,
so
so
much for having me. Like,
thank you.
yeah, I'm really grateful.
I can't wait to see you next week. Safe travels. We will welcome you with a full Canadian welcome. And thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you,
We'll see you soon.
Kristina. Can't wait. Bye.
Bye.